What role would you say self-esteem played on your development, not only your channeling development, but your personal development as well?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that my childhood was rather harsh. Is a word that I could use. My parents are a little bit older and from another generation, and so they were very stern. And I would say that I was probably punished quite often, definitely more than would be necessary to nurture a child. And so that was the difficult part of it. But when I look back on it now, the gift of that is that I took all of that and went inside and started asking those important questions. Is this what life is really about? Is this what life is meant to be? And if it's not, somehow I was already speaking to someone or something, and I was asking, show me something better, show me something different. And so I did. I began to receive words and guidance and inspiration from within. So what I learned from that is that no matter what's taking place in the world outside of us, those external things that somehow seem to happen to us that we don't really think that we deserve, there are places that we can go within that will nurture us and that will allow us to have those things that will allow us to grow into something beautiful. And I really think of my life as a real beautiful experience.
So for our listeners, how would you say maybe all people that are listening could try to listen to their inner voices as well? How would you tell them to do that?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that it's always there and that it's always been there. And what we need to do is just to begin to distinguish that voice from the others. Those, since we're talking about self-esteem today, which is a perfect topic, and the one voice that we tend to listen to most often is the one that tells us that we got it wrong, that we're late, that we should have known better, that this project or assignment or task should have been done by now or could have been done better. That voice is the loudest voice, and so we listen to that. And the voice of, whether you want to call it spirit or channeling or the inner self, it is the self that's speaking to us. And, one of my teachers told me so many years ago, spirit doesn't shout. It doesn't have to. And so it's up to us to listen a little bit more quietly for that inner voice. It's often a small voice that speaks a lot of truth in a very short amount of words or time, and it always makes us pause and at least ponder that for a moment. And we all have that, but sometimes even when we listen to it, we go quickly past that onto those other physical things that need to be done. We're very conditioned that the reality are those things that we can see and touch, and those are the things that we need to do. And that doesn't allow us very much time to be what we truly are, which is a self or a being. And Gaia loves to tell us that we are human beings, not human doings. And so whenever anything comes up, at least to pause and remember what we are, just to be for a moment, and that it's not going to slow the process down, and it's not going to add one more thing to do during the day, but it has a very nice way of aligning everything again.
And how do you tell people the difference between listening to your own higher self, your own voice, versus listening to somebody else's voice, like Gaia in this case?
That's a very good question. So primarily, as we said, the first voice that we listen to belongs to the personality. And the personality has an ability to decide quickly, very much with yes or no, very much with answers or ideas that judge. And the personality is compares as well. So the personality compares day to night. It compares us to our neighbor or to our friends, or in some way to very strong polarities, success and failure, light and dark, The personality sees these things and quickly moves to one or the other. And then beyond that, we find the self. And the self doesn't need the personality. In fact, the self uses another part of our brain, another part of our mind. The self has the ability to unite the left and the right hemispheres so that now we're automatically more balanced. We have the ability to evaluate. The self has a greater perspective. It doesn't see things completely as right or wrong. It sees things all as variables. So when we are working with the self, we automatically have more choice. Even if it seems to the personality that there's no choice, we have to do this or that, the self knows why we are doing this or that. So the self chooses something, and it gives that greater perspective. And then beyond that, we get to whether it could be Gaia or another one of our inner teachers or guides from another realm or a dimension, and we can recognize these because they're even more impartial. In some ways, they're more loving, they're more compassionate, but they're also a little bit more detached. So again, there's no right or wrong. There's nothing that we must do, but it gives to us a vision that gives us more support. So when I'm in that channel space, I feel supported from within and without. I feel a very firm foundation beneath me. So, for instance, people sometimes right away begin to look for something that feels otherworldly or very heavenly. And instead, when they feel very grounded or very supported, they think they're doing it wrong or they think they haven't gone anywhere when the opposite is happening. Because Spirit allows us to feel very comfortable in our life, very comfortable in our body, very comfortable in how we are and how we are moving forward in life. And it's like having peripheral vision. And after you've listened to the gentle voices a little bit and begin to set aside the personality just a little bit, you can recognize the subtle differences between them.
So when you talk about channeling, you mean that you're using your senses to listen to this voice, which kind of sounds inside you. Yes, that's true. You know, in the classes that I teach, because I do teach people how to do what I do, how to channel, and believe me, they learn so quickly these days, so much faster than I think I did or I saw other people do years ago. It takes into consideration all of our senses. So again, we put such an emphasis on our 5 physical senses. If we can see something or smell it or touch it in some way, we think that's more real. And when you work with the channeled state, it moves you into the more subtle spaces, intuition and telepathy and other even more subtle dimensional senses that we have as well. We take these for granted. As children, we were not taught to develop these. If we had been shown to acknowledge that these were present as children, they would have developed very naturally on their own. But because they weren't, we think that only some people or special people have these abilities, and it takes a little bit longer to bring them forward. But we all have them. And so, yes, we use the subtle senses to touch spirit and to bring it closer into our life.